What's up, everyone, and welcome into another episode of Wizards Latest. I'm your host and DC sports fan, Ben Robertson, and on this page, we break down all the biggest headlines surrounding the Washington Wizards. So make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons down below. Don't forget to drop your comments down below as well. I appreciate all the support here on the page and on the road to 1K. I thank those of you who tune in every single weekday and are consistently down in that comment section. Today, I want to talk about the Jonathan Kuminga saga coming to an end for now in Golden State. Why does that matter here in DC? Then we'll take a look at a couple of training camp moves. And lastly, let's talk about how the first practice of the season went. Again, guys, thanks for tuning in here to the page every single weekday. And like I said, let's talk Jonathan Kuminga and how that signing impacts things in DC. First off, in Golden State, again, that saga for now ended. Kuminga signing to a 2-year, $48 million deal. Now, the second year of that contract is a team option for Kuminga. This seems smart to me. He had a 1-year, $8 million qualifying offer on the table that he was reportedly at one point going to be willing to sign. Seems like, again, I say all the time, I'm no math major, but that's a lot more money than the 1-year, $8 million contract he was going to get. For Golden State, the second year of that contract is a team option, and this was a big point in negotiations. Kuminga obviously wanted to avoid having a team option on the deal at all. Now, in the Shams story that talks about this signing, he says this is so Golden State or another team, again, specifically includes or another team could rip up this contract at the end of this year and sign Kuminga for a long-term deal. If Golden State kind of figures things out with him, maybe he stays there, and maybe if Golden State wants to move him during the season, they still have that option, and another team would have the flexibility to not just have him now for another 1-year rental. So here's how it affects things in DC. Of course, Jonathan Kuminga now back kind of on the trade market here. Again, like I said, specifically in the Shams story, says this is designed so that if Golden State or another team wants to rework the contract at the end of the year or just come up with a new contract, they have the ability to do that. Now, Washington was not really interested, it seemed like, in Kuminga here this offseason. So I'll ask again if he becomes available. Should the team be interested in making an offer? I would have to lean towards and guess they probably don't, they probably aren't intrigued again during the season if they weren't during the offseason. And here's why. I think the team's already kind of full of wings. And then again, with essentially just the nature of this contract, you still have to sign Kuminga long term, even if you were to trade for him. And that's probably going to be, it looks like he kind of wants $100 million or something around that mark. And I'm just not sure. Again, maybe he sets the world on fire and proves this wrong. I know there's talent there, but I'm not sure if he's going to be worth that type of money. Really, it seems like the big question with Jonathan Kuminga, is it Steve Kerr in the Warriors franchise that's holding him back, or is he just not as good, not quite as good as he thinks? That's kind of the big storyline, the big debate with Jonathan Kuminga. And I feel like it's something that sometimes, even with NBA fans, can become a little bit heated because I think a lot of people fall on much different spectrums of that conversation when it comes to him in particular. But I want to talk about the second thing or second reason why this is worth discussion for Wizards fans. Washington could be headed to this sort of area next offseason. Remember, Bilal Coulibaly and Cam Whitmore both headed into year 3 this season, and if they're not extended after year 3, they're also headed towards restricted free agency. And I talked about yesterday on the page, those situations we've seen here this offseason can get tricky. We've also seen really a spectrum of different outcomes with those restricted free agent situations. Obviously, here with Kuminga, it seems like him and the Warriors meeting somewhere in the middle with what both parties wanted. Now, we've seen Josh Giddey, he got $100 million from Chicago, and we've seen Cam Thomas go to the other end of the spectrum where he accepted the 1 year, $6 million qualifying offer, completely betting on himself, leaving more money on the table. Now, I respect the gamble, I guess, in the personal belief, but again, just leaving that type of money, or when you could get more money and maybe an extra year on your deal on the table, just seems kind of wild to me. I will never be able to maybe quite understand that, but I don't have millions in the bank like these guys do already. But I will ask the question, and I've asked it on the page before, but to you guys, do you think Bilal or Cam is more likely to get extended here after this season? Could both possibly reach an extension? I think if neither did, it would mean they both really, really disappointed. And honestly, the team would be, I think, really bummed out if they couldn't get an extension or didn't feel like they wanted to extend either player. Hopefully, right? It's a tough choice. Hopefully, they both have really good seasons, and Will Dawkins has kind of a decision to make. I'm really excited and intrigued to see kind of how that progresses. But I want to move on to training camp, of course, getting started here this week. Keyshawn Gilbert has been waived from the training camp roster already. He was one of the Exhibit 10 invitees. Sounds like he's still a go-go candidate. Again, Will Dawkins has talked about how he wants to utilize the G League roster, be a little bit more fluid with the regular season and or the NBA and G League rosters. And again, after we see and probably expect moves to be made during the season, that fluidity will be shown off a little bit more. But Akolda Gak will be the guy brought in here to training camp in Gilbert's spot, a 6'11 forward, played 3 games with the Wizards actually in Summer League. A guy that grew up in Australia. His parents were refugees there from South Sudan, has been playing professionally in Australia since 2020. He broke into the G League here this past spring, and now again, likely probably a G League go-go candidate, but hey, maybe he can show some things. And we, like I've said, that doesn't mean he may not get an NBA opportunity here this year with the Wizards if he is in the G League. Again, talking about maybe going to have some roster fluidity there. But the last thing I want to talk about here, and again, relating to training camp getting underway, is practice number 1. How'd that go? First practice takeaways from the players, at least, was, man, we are focusing defensively a whole bunch. I saw quotes from Trey Johnson, CJ McCollum. I'm sure there was others as well. But just talked about, again, the defensive priority of that first practice for Brian Keefe. It's been something the coaching staff, the front office has been chatting about a whole bunch, even after Trey Johnson was selected. It's been something talked about with AJ as well. But even after Trey was selected, who's known as a scorer coming out of college, that's kind of going to be, that's what we expect him to do really well as soon as he steps on the NBA court. But even then, Will Dawkins talking about, I think he can improve defensively. I was showing him defensive clips from his time in college and say, hey, I know we can be better than this. I also think it kind of goes to show how different maybe some NBA fans view defense in the league versus how actual teams view it. And just take the Wizards, for instance. Around the league, kind of viewed as a bad team. We know that again, I'm not going to argue with that record wise, but we know that things are being done right in this rebuild, in this process. Will Dawkins, Michael Winger, we talk about it all the time. It's headed in the right direction. But again, around the league, that's the reputation. Fair or not. And even the Wizards from day one in training camp prioritizing defense, prioritizing, hey, we have to get it after it on that end of the court. And I really think a lot of people just don't realize, man, NBA offenses are just so good. I'll use the Wizards as an example again. Not a team expected to do a whole bunch in the standings this year, but you have guys like Trey Johnson, CJ McCollum, Chris Middleton, Cam Whitmore, Keyshawn George, all we know everyone I just listed there and others on the roster as well, we know can put the ball in the basket. The best teams have to buy in defensively because even teams at the bottom of the standings have guys that can go off and give you 30 or 40 points on any given night. And I think we saw, again, with the two NBA Finals teams, obviously the Thunder were really good defensively. And then for the Pacers, when they sort of made that a focal point of their team and of their season, well, the whole year turned around for them and they went on that finals run. So, gonna keep you posted on everything Wizards related here on the page, everything going on in training camp, and of course, rumors around the league as well. I appreciate all the support here on the road to 1K. Make sure you've hit those like and subscribe buttons, turn on post notifications. Don't forget to drop your comments, and thanks for watching another episode of Wizards Latest.